हुकूमत सिंध और बेनजीर इनकम सपोर्ट प्रोग्राम के इश्तराक से वसीला हक सिंध।
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Q&A with PJMir. Now, in this program, you've had ambassadors from various countries coming along and talking about the country. Today, as the series continues, I have with me the ambassador of Spain, Javier M.Carbajosa, who is now the 16th ambassador of Spain to Pakistan. Spain started the diplomatic relations in 1951, and today we see that Spain stands as one of its foremost allies as far as trading and bilateral relations is concerned. In fact, in 2007, President Musharraf was the first Pakistani head of state who went into Spain and signed treaties of MOUs concerning tourism, heritage, culture, business, and so on and forth. Well, today with this new ambassador who's taken over from the previous ambassador last July and presented his credentials to the President of Pakistan, Asif Ali Zardari, on the 7th of September 2012. I'll be talking to him on a variety of subjects, and of course I'll also be asking him, where does Spain stand with Pakistan, and where are the trading relations, where are they heading? So I'll say welcome to the program, Ambassador.
Thank you very much indeed, and welcome to the Embassy of Spain.
Thank you. Now, you've come here for the very first time, before I get into, as they said, the nitty-gritty, you've come here for the first time to Pakistan from your various assignments, international assignments abroad. So how do you see your visit here, and how do you see your interaction with the local people in this country?
Let me tell you that I was here in Pakistan 10 years ago, but at that point I was working at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with the Secretary of State. I was here with a mission. I remember very well we visited Islamabad and Lahore and maintained a certain number of interviews and meetings with Pakistani officials. So that was my first contact with Pakistan. At the same time, I can tell you that I have been following for a long time in my various posts the issues and relationships between Spain and the Islamic world. And as you know, Islam was present in Spain for a long time, for almost 8 centuries, so we had a very clear connection with this part of the world. As far as my assignment here, I must tell you that first of all, I'm extremely delighted. I'm enjoying my stay here since day one. My predecessors told me that one of the things that you will see is, besides problems of difficulties that you might encounter, the warmth and the hospitality of Pakistani people, and I'm more than happy to confirm that this is absolutely true from day one. I will certainly have my tenure here in Pakistan in the best possible way, and I will do my best in order to promote relationships between our both countries.
Now, I understand that Pakistan is a member of, or rather Spain is a member of the Pakistan Development Forum. So how do you see the economic assistance and bilateral trade between the two countries?
These will be actually one of my most important tasks here. Spain and Pakistan, as you said before, we have good relations, both in political terms and economic terms. In economic terms, our trade balance is about 850 million euros a year. And actually there's a deficit as far as trade balance is concerned, in the sense that we import in Spain much more, so many products from Pakistan that we do otherwise. In the sense that we import textiles and leather, and actually what we got from Pakistan is much more than we export to Pakistan. I'm not so much concerned at this point by that imbalance. What I'm trying to do here is to explore new avenues, to find new opportunities, and see ways in which businessmen from both communities can do things together. This is one of the things that I told many businessmen in Spain before coming over here. I understand that you have discovered Asia, and that businessmen in Spain have a tendency to make business with India or China. I don't have anything against it. On the contrary, what I'm trying to tell them is, have also a look to Pakistan. Pakistan is a huge country with almost 200 million people, with big opportunities. I think that the potential to do things together here is huge.
I understand that when I look at the European Union list of countries, Spain has been foremost in I would say, assisting and supporting Pakistan on a variety of subjects. So which one would you say would be the best one?
Let me say that, that we share with Pakistan a very clear idea. The future of the economy, as far as Pakistan is concerned, is not aid, but trade. And in that sense, both the European countries, most particularly Spain, and Pakistan as well, are doing whatever is possible in order to promote that trade. Not only from a bilateral basis, but also from a European Union point of view. The European Union relationships with Pakistan started late, and actually it is since 2010 that we devoted and we started to promote and to expand and to diversify our means of communication, our means to understand each other, and we started signing a certain number of agreements. Pakistan has been a member, has been actually a beneficiary of what we call the Generalized Scheme of Preferences, and now what Pakistan is looking for is to what we call the GSP Plus. That is a scheme whereas a certain number of Pakistani products would have a preference access to European markets, again at preferential rates, in order to promote trade, to promote economic relationships, because we understand that this is the way to promote and to expand welfare in Pakistan and also in Europe.
Now, I would say a ballpark figure of 55% of trade between the two countries. So what are the foremost things that Spain imports from Pakistan?
Let me tell you, because that's important when we were talking about the European Union. The European Union is the first trade partner of Pakistan. It's almost $10 billion a year. That's an important thing.
$10 billion between Pakistan and Spain?
No, between Pakistan and the European Union. Again, the European Union is the first trade partner of Pakistan. That is an important figure to keep in mind. Now, as far as Spain is concerned, basically it's textiles, leather, and some chemical products. And from Pakistan to Spain. Another country, what we do is basically some agricultural products and basically machinery, equipment. This is basically the two chapters. But again, I think that we have a lot of potential. I have been, since my arrival, having a lot of meetings with the community of businessmen in Karachi, in Islamabad, in Rawalpindi. I do intend to go to Lahore as well, and my message is always the same. We have to be able to identify which are the sectors in which we can do more things together. And what I have been trying to tell them is that Spain, despite the economic rough patch in which we are now, but we have very strong economic points, and some of our companies and our enterprise are leading in a certain number of sectors. Renewable energies, agriculture, bioagriculture, infrastructure, telecommunication, banking system. Those are a certain number, and certainly, as you mentioned before, we have a lot of experience in tourism or in basic products as olive oil. I think that gives us a wide spectrum of possibilities in order to work together.
And again, over, as the figures say, 70,000, you'd be able to correct it. Is it correct that 70,000 people from Pakistan live in Spain?
Actually, it's more than that. I think that according to our last figures, it's more than 100,000 people. Actually, it's close to 120,000 people living in the whole of Spain. It's true that most of them concentrate in Barcelona, Valencia, Burgos, some other parts of Spain, but basically most of the people from Pakistan, curiously, coming from Sialkot and Gujarat, all of them, as we were talking before, but they have a tendency to concentrate on these areas. And we know very well why that happens. This is the traditional pattern of immigration. We know that very well because, as I was telling you before our interview, Spain has been exporting immigrants in the past years, in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, because we were looking also for a better economic horizon. This is what we do. That is what explains immigration. They devote themselves to small commerce, restaurants, agriculture, some small business. I must tell you that in general terms they are a perfectly integrated community in Spain. I have seen it myself because I travel usually to Barcelona. You can meet them anywhere, and actually they have a peaceful existence there, and they enrich the cultural life of the city and of our country.
And what kind of, I would say, response or responsibilities would you expect, let's say, from people from Pakistan or from any other migrant coming along and settling in Spain?
Actually, the same thing that you could be expecting from anyone else, that is to respect the law of the country. And this is something which is applicable not only to Pakistanis living in Spain, but for Spaniards living in a third country. I think that it is perfectly compatible to maintain a loyalty to your traditions, to your religious beliefs, to the way you are brought up, to your customs, to your particular celebrations, and at the same time to understand that you're living in a country which is not your country, and that there are a certain number of rules that you have to abide by and to respect. And as long as we do that, and as I'm telling you, this Pakistani community in Spain does that in general terms, no problems are to be expected.
What kind of educational exchange or exchanges have been going on between Pakistan and Spain?
They are limited so far. I guess that language is a first difficulty. At the same time, a certain number of programs that we used to boost and to support in the past in some other countries are at this time going through a recess because of these economic problems that we are facing now, and a certain number of development funds and programs that we used to have in the past have now been frozen. Fortunately, 2013 would be the last year of economic recession, so I do hope that in the short term we will be able to renew our commitments and to restart our cultural programs, our exchange programs with Pakistan and with other countries in the areas. Let me tell you that I have detected a great interest for everything which is related to Spain, beginning by language. We have a certain number of professors here, but despite the fact that people in Pakistan speak Urdu or Punjabi or whatever, but there is a growing interest for Spanish and for everything which is connected to Spanish culture. And that is a good thing, and I'm extremely encouraged by that fact.
Now, a lot of Pakistanis see that Spain has developed a lot in science and technology. And do you again foresee any exchanges on that front?
Because as we were talking before, we were talking about one of the sectors in which Spain has a leading role, which is renewable energies. If we have a renewable leading experience in Europe, is because we have been able to develop a certain number of technologies. In a country like Pakistan, in which energy is a serious problem, I think that we could do much more in terms of solar, electrical, thermo energy. We have the means, we have the capacity, and Pakistan has a lot of interest, and it is a very serious problem here. So I think that would be a natural field of cooperation between our two countries.
But which one amongst all of the energy sectors you've mentioned, which one would be more conducive and useful for Pakistan?
I think renewable, solar would be, or wind. Spain is the first European producer of wind power. Wind and solar, I think I think would be extremely well received here. Our technologies, our expertise, and the possibility to apply our experience in the past in Spain to Pakistan, I think that could be beneficial for both countries.
But would you say, because a lot of people are skeptical about solar power, although solar power has been taking off, particularly in Germany, but in a country like Spain, do you think, or Pakistan, do you think that solar power is the future?
It takes time. Let me tell you that Spain has now the most important percentage in the energetic mix, meaning the different ways of energy that we consume. Spain has 23% of renewable energies. This is the highest rate in European countries. That's very high. And in that 23% we have energy and some other means. It takes time, it's true. It's also a culture. It's not only a matter of equipment, of having and developing the right infrastructure and facilities. It's also a question of culture. You need some time to get through that. But as long as there is a political will, as long as we understand that the traditional means of energy are limited, are finite, and that sooner or later we will have to make the jump and we'll make the salt. I think that it is a good thing to start thinking in a transitional way, and start thinking about the future, and start taking now the measures that will be necessary to look for the brighter future.
Okay, Ambassador, we'll just take a short break, and after the break, again, we'll come back and speak to the Ambassador of Spain, Javier Carbajosa. Of course, he's telling about what Pakistan and Spain have done in the past, but more on bilateral relations. And of course, when Pakistan suffered one of its worst catastrophes and disasters as far as earthquakes are concerned, Spain was one of those leading countries who came along and sent 5 plane loads of aircrafts to Pakistan and help. We'll talk more on that just after this break.
हुकूमत सिंध और बेनजीर इनकम सपोर्ट प्रोग्राम के इश्तराक से वसीला हक सिंध सूबे भर से 34,000 से ज्यादा नौजवानों को अपना कारोबार शुरू करने के लिए 2 एक साथ में 3 लाख रुपए की अदायगी के साथ 2 हफ्ते की मुफ्त तरबियत और रहनुमाई। कम से कम मैट्रिक तालीम रखने वाले 19 से 35 साल के मुस्तहिक उन नौजवानों के लिए अपना कारोबार शुरू करने का तारीखी मौका, जिनका नाम बेनजीर इनकम सपोर्ट प्रोग्राम के गुर्बत सर्वे में दर्ज हुआ और उनका गुर्बत शुमारी स्कोर 16.17 से 30 के दरमियान हो। वसीला हक सूबा सिंध में माशी बहाली और आवाम की खुशहाली के लिए अहम संग मील। वसीला हक सिंध, हमारा सिंध, बावकार, बारोजगार। 3 लाख रुपए 2 मसावी इकसात में हुकूमत सिंध और बेनजीर इनकम सपोर्ट प्रोग्राम के इश्तराक से सिंध के गरीब और पढ़े लिखे नौजवानों के लिए बिलासूद कर्ज की फरहमी का प्रोग्राम। 1,50,000 रुपए की पहली किस्त की अदायगी शुरू।
इस कर्जे की सहूलत से तालीम और अपनी मेहनत से हर घर आएगी खुशहाली, जब काम करे जवान पढ़े लिखे, वसीला बने हैं लोग अपने, पूरे होंगे अब सपने। वसीला
हक सिंध, हमारा सिंध, बावकार, बारोजगार।
Welcome back to Q&A with PJMir. For those of you who just joined me, I have with me here the Ambassador of Spain, Javier Carbajosa, and he's just, as I mentioned before the start of the program, presented his credentials not so very long ago on the 7th of September 2012 to the President of Pakistan, Asif Ali Zardari. Of course, he's also the 16th Ambassador of Spain to Pakistan, and what his vision, what he wants to do with Pakistan, of course, as far as trade and I would say commerce, industry, science and technology, tourism, culture and so on forth, that is what we're talking. Now, just before the break, I mentioned the aid to Pakistan as far as disaster element is concerned. Spain was quite I'd say forthright in coming along, not as much as perhaps some other countries. Why?
Well, that depends on our capacities at that particular moment. Distance is also a problem as well. Despite all that, and certainly in the measure of our possibilities, we were extremely sympathetic to the Pakistani problems. And that is why not only in the earthquakes in 2005, but also in the terrible floods that assolated the country in 2010, we were able to contribute in the measure of our possibilities to alleviate the pain and the sufferings of the Pakistani people. Actually, not only that, we were, along with the members of the European Union, instrumental in order to adopt a certain number of measures within the European Union in order to have some sort of preferential treatment to textile products coming from Pakistan included into the European markets in a different way to help, to contribute, to increase the economic means of Pakistan in order to confront that terrible tragedy. And I can tell you that despite our complicated economic situation at this point, should any similar situation arise, we would be here again in order to help our Pakistani friends.
And when we speak about Pakistani friends, and as you mentioned earlier on, that there are more than 100,000 Pakistanis who live in Spain. Now, what about friends and relations and I'd say acquaintances of those people who live in Spain? What kind of visa facilitations do you give for them?
There are two basic systems. This is what we call the Schengen visa, and there's another type, which is, of course, that kind of visa, which is only limited to the space, to the country. Exactly, it's only valid for Spain itself. This is only when you have to do something specific in Spain, and you don't need to travel or to cross the borders to go anywhere else. The Schengen visa, as you know, Schengen, it's the name of a city in Europe in which that agreement between European Union member states was signed. And according to this system, whenever you get a Schengen visa, you have the right not only to visit a specific country, but also to travel freely between members of that agreement. There is, of course, a certain number of requirements that are needed, a certain number of conditions that need to be met. All those conditions are available and well known to the public in our embassies. And I don't think that you would be surprised to find in those requirements any different to what the Pakistani authorities required to enter Pakistan. There's a very simple proceeding. The only thing is that, given that we're talking about visas that give you access to the whole of the European territory, a certain number of days of consultations, of previous consultations between member states, is a system actually that works automatically. Every time that a Pakistani citizen wants to go to France or to Spain or to Italy, he just presents his application. And then these has to run through a certain number of security checks, and that's it. Of course, you have to assure that you have a certain number of economic means to sustain your stay there. But again, this is a formal proceeding similar to what many other countries have in terms of asking for a visa. I had to ask for a visa as well to get into your country, although of a different nature given the official role that I'm playing here.
Now, when we speak about visa, throughout, as you said, you know, every country has its own regulations, and of course there's a standard regulation for Schengen. But when you apply, for example, at any given embassy, a lot of people tend to complain that you know, these courier services, they tend to take up more money from them. They tend to take up you know, that edge away when they can come directly to your embassy or to any other embassy. Would you say that would be a better formula rather than going through the FedExes and all?
You see, that depends on each European Union embassy here. There are big embassies who deal themselves with the visa applications. There are other embassies like ours who have outsourced the preparation of the files, and once that the particular agency has done that previous work, all the files come to us, and certainly we have the final decision. We have the final power to review all those files and to take the final decision. But believe me, the fees are clearly established. They are open to the public, and I can tell you that we will admit no joke or any irregularity as far as that is concerned. The public and the Pakistani people asking for a visa, presenting their application, has the right to know how much they have to pay and what are the papers and documentation that they need to submit, and that's it. We will not take the Pakistani people for granted, and they have the right to know what they are expected to present and how much money they have to pay.
And what is now the current policy on migration, as when we see that Canadians open it up for migration, Australia opens it up, and I do understand that Spain at one time had also encouraged foreigners to come along and live in Spain. So are those measures more stringent, or they're more relaxed, or what kind of measures do they take?
It's true that has been changing every now and then, depending on the economic and the political situation. At this time, you have to take into account as well the fact that because of Schengen, our immigration policies have to be coordinated at European level. So you will not find a situation in which the Netherlands or Italy have different immigration policy to ours, you see. I wouldn't call it an stringent immigration policy, despite the fact that the situation at this point in Spain is complicated, to the fact, and this is a piece of information that might be interesting for you, many of the immigrants, of long-term immigrants that were in Spain for some time, are now returning to their country of origin. and I'm talking about some countries in Europe, some countries in Latin America, some countries in the north of Africa. Why? Well, for two reasons. First of all, because the general situation in their own countries of origin have improved, and also because the situation of the country in which they were living, in this case Spain, has deteriorated. If you take the situation in Spain, in which we have very high unemployment rates and in which there has been some economic contraction in the last years, you will understand that many of these immigrants who have been living in Spain for some time feel attracted now to the idea of returning to their own countries. But this is a basic idea as far as immigration is concerned. And again, I tell you this because I know the phenomena for a long time. If you're happy in your country, if you are at ease, you find a very good job in your own country, I think that you wouldn't find so many people attracted to going overseas, you see. I can understand that scientists and professors and teachers and researchers are interested in widening their experiences some of the time. But as a general rule, if you're happy in your own country, maybe you wouldn't feel so that attracted to go to find something else somewhere else, you know. Again, to make a long story short, I wouldn't characterize our policy as stringent, but actually it has to be a policy that has to be established and settled down in cohesion and coordination with the rest of our European Union members.
Now, when we speak about dual nationals, I understand Pakistan and Spain have an agreement that there can be Spanish and Pakistani nationals living there, and of course they can come and live here. What about their rights? As dual nationals, do they enjoy the same rights?
Absolutely. In the moment they have the Spanish nationality, they have the same rights and obligations of anyone else.
And if, let's say, if there's some flaw which is continuing in the Spanish, I would say, political system, can a dual national speak and say, look, this is not right and this is right? Can they do that?
They have they have the same obligations, the same duties, and the same responsibilities, and absolutely the same rights as any other Spanish citizen. They are a Spanish citizen. The only thing is that they also have another nationality, in this case a Pakistani one.
And does that create a hindrance or not?
Not really. No, it shouldn't. There is no reason for that. Dual nationality is a very well-known phenomenon. You have that here in Pakistan too. And even the Constitution of Spain talks about double nationality with all those countries with which we have agreements, or because of historical links that we had in the past.
But it doesn't change their basic human and fundamental rights?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Actually, I must tell you that we have a census of the Spanish community here at the Embassy of Spain. Of course, we include in that census all those who also have the Spanish and the Pakistani nationality. And in that sense, they are liable and they are offered the same rights and the same services and the same capacities as the one offered to the rest of Spanish citizens, even to those who are just Spanish by origin. We're talking about many Pakistani people that after many years in Spain, they have acquired the Spanish nationality, and actually they have transmitted that nationality to their sons. That's what the law understands, that this is a feasible scenario, a factual, and so we proceed.
And Ambassador, there's a very interesting question which I'm going to put. If a person is of Spanish nationality and he also holds a Pakistani nationality, considering something goes wrong in Pakistan, would the Spanish government object to that person holding dual nationality to